Okay, and we are live. Thank you everyone for joining us. This will be the third webinar of our Simulated Workplace Leadership series. This is Amber Ravenscroft. I was with you for the previous two webinars, and today we'll be talking about leadership and communication. And I am super excited to welcome Matt Wolf. He's going to be our education manager and take over some of our youth leadership programs. And so he's actually going to be delivering the content of today's webinar for you. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you very much, Amber.
Take it away.
So today, thank you very much. So today we're talking about what's the difference between a group and a team. Go ahead. Next slide, please. So today's, we're going to look at a group, and here's the definition of a group. It's groups are organized around individuals bringing together independent work in light of individual goals. Next slide, please. So now let's look at a team. Now a team's definition is teams organized around individuals bringing together coordinated work in light of collective goals. Next slide. Now, the difference or characteristics of a group and a team are the following. So within a group, so you have independent work, individual goals, individual accountability, individual evaluation, and usually there's a designated strong leader that runs the entire group all the time. So on the other end, as a team, now a team works together and they coordinate their work, they have collective goals, their mutual accountability, they have collective evaluations, and the leadership roles are shared, and there's different roles within. So it's like it's definitely shared between the entire team. Next slide, please.
Matt, let me ask you a question real quick. When we do this in our in-person trainings, we often ask students, and the students that will be watching this, I want you to think about this too, just as a kind of a point. Is a track team a group or a team? What would you consider them? This is just, I'm putting on the spot here, but it's interesting to think about. And there are a lot of different arguments for either.
Well, that's a great point, because a track team, they have individual subcategories, and so they're all individual. They have an individual goal, but as a team, they have a mutual goal, and I think that would be considered a team because they're all working together to better the team, and they all have they don't really, I guess, really accountable. They don't have that, but they have mutual accountability.
Yeah.
If that answers your question.
Yeah, I agree. We always like to put people on the spot with that one because it's kind of a challenging thought, because it's kind of a mixture of both in many ways.
It is. It all depends on, like, as a whole, the team is going for a same goal, but individually they all are competing on independent levels.
Yep. All right. I'll move forward. Thank you for answering my on-the-spot question.
That's all right. And so now, just like what Amber was saying, we're looking at different examples of a group and a team. And I want you to think about, just like what Amber said about the example of a team being a track team. Now, let's look at examples of a group. Now, this could be in a variety of different ways. Examples of groups could be student council within a school, political groups, departments within a company, choir groups, or even a union within a company. Now, all of those groups, they're individual. They have individual goals, but they're also working for a main goal. But they're individually mindset, and they usually have a strong leader always in charge. On the other end, you have teams. So examples of teams, and this just like what Amber was saying about the track team. All sports teams are a team. They have a coach. They're always they're working together. They have accountability together. Another example of a team would be a team of doctors. Another example would be teachers on a team, like a grade level team. And so those are teams that are always working together to be accountable for each other. And so those are like some of the examples that we're looking for. Next slide, please.
Sure. And as you're thinking about this as a student, I also want you to think about whether your simulated workplace is a group or a team. That'll be a really good reflection for you.
Exactly. That's a good point. And see if you're a coach or a coach or I guess yeah, I guess we're gonna have to edit that out. So
No problem.
so now let's look at as in leadership. Let's look at some who are some of examples of effective leaders. And so I want you to take a second and I want you to think about all the leaders that you know or have been exposed to in your life. And just take a second and think about examples of effective leaders. So if you had a couple of ideas of effective leaders, these might be teachers, these might be coaches. Some famous examples that I was thinking about were like Pope Francis, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela. Those are like the famous ones that most people know, but we always have personal effective leaders within our own with our own personal lives. Next slide, please. So with that, so thinking about all those leaders that you, all those effective leaders within your life and the famous leaders that we all know, what kind of things did these leaders do? When you think of your coach or your teacher or just anybody or like a famous leader, what kinds of things do these leaders do to make them effective? So I want you to think about how these leaders are effective leaders and what makes them effective leaders. Just take a second and think about some of the characteristics that make an effective leader that you've been exposed to. So if you had a couple minutes to or just a little bit of time to think about that, some of the characteristics that I was thinking about with effective leaders, like within my personal life, and also with the famous leaders, some of the things would be confidence. Some of the things would be characteristics of engaging with others, honesty and integrity, and most, if all of them, were effective communicators. Next slide. Now, let's think about a time also when you were a leader. How were you put in this role as a leader? Now, as we think, sometimes we're always put in a position, either we're placed in it or by accidents, or it was prepared as a leader. And I want us to think, what went well when you were a leader? What are some of the things that you struggled when you were a leader? And as you think about that time or experience, what would you do differently as a leader? And those are the questions those are the reflective questions that always grow yourself better to be a more effective leader for the next time you're in that position. Next slide, please. Now, as we think of leaders and we think of all the, we've thought about examples of leaders, we thought about the characteristics. Now, think of 3 things that a leader can do to hold back a team or hold a team back from progressing. I just want you to take a moment and think of things that we've always, if you've been exposed to a leader that held back a team, what kinds of things come to mind when you think of that? Some of the things that I was thinking about personally about when leaders hold a team back, some characteristics or some traits that came to mind was negativity. Some are dishonest, not respecting others, and one thing that really holds people back is holds a team back is not listening to the needs of the team. All right, next slide. So as we traveled through the examples, what a team is, what effective leadership is, what kinds of things do these leaders do, I want you to think about effective leadership and think of 3 things that can move a team forward? What kind of traits, what kind of things that a leader can do to move a team forward? Now take a couple minutes or take some time to think about effective leaders in a team. What can they do? Some of the things that you might have thought about, this is from my personal experience as well, is effective leaders can encourage a discussion and encourage you to take risks as a team. The other thing would be they're very honest and vulnerable and letting you know the goals and visions. And the other thing that I really thought about was for me is how a leader can move a team forward is they can listen and they know the needs and wants of a team, and they can communicate with others more effectively. Next slide, please. So now we're going to look at communication, and this is very important on that end to be an effective leader. And we're going to look at two aspects: hearing versus listening. And these are two kind of basic ideas, but they hold true. And I want you to think: do you hear, or are you a good hearer, or are you a listener? Next slide, please. So here's some definitions of two. On hearing, it's the definition they say is the faculty of perceiving sounds. It's very general, very basic. But then you come to listening, and this is the definition of listening is give one's attention to a sound, take notice of, and act on what someone says. And that's very important. It's the take notice of and act on what someone says. And I think that's what an effective leader really does, is they listen. Now we're going to look at three different types of listening. So there are three levels of listening. Level one is called subjective listening. This focuses on the listener, and it just focuses on what does this mean to me. So this is just a basic conversational listening. An example of this would be like if somebody was saying, I had the toughest time finishing that presentation for class today. And somebody would respond as a subjective listener, and this is how they would respond. They would say, you just have to focus, or you just have to force yourself. Whenever I don't want to do something, I remember the Nike slogan, just do it. The big thing there is it's about themselves or about me. It's not about the other person. So this is subjective listening, level one. Next slide. Level two, this is objective listening. This is the focus is on the speaker. What does this mean to them? And it's more reflective. So it's more focused on the other person, and it's a more engaging listening strategy. And an example of this one would be is, I had the toughest time finishing that presentation for class today. Now the response would be, you struggled, but ultimately you worked hard and did it. Congratulations. So the shift is not only on I, but it's on you. And I think that just shows respect, and it also shows that the person is engaged in listening. Next slide. And the last level, and this is like the highest level, and this is level three, and it's intuitive listening. And so this is listening to what the speaker is not saying. So this is done through intuition and body language. And so the example that we are looking at would be, I had the toughest time finishing that presentation for class today. And the response would be, it sounds like you are stressed out. It must feel good that you worked hard and finished on time. Now, this is a great aspect, as in not only are they listening to the person, but also they have intuition. They're digging deeper. And so that makes that person feel, one, respected, and two, valued. And I think that's the biggest thing to be an effective leader, is just engaging in that in the other person or the teammate. Next slide. So here's one of the challenges that we are going to set out for you. And so what we want you to do is we want you to write down a set of goals you can set for yourself to be an effective leader. And this is something that is what you can do for the next time you're in a leadership position and to be an effective leader. And I think this is something that setting that goal will bring you success when you are presented with this leadership role.
Perfect. And I think we give them a quick set of maybe like 2 to 3 goals would be great. And if you could focus at least one of them around changing your communication methods or improving your communication, that would be great. And what we're going to do is we'll just have you send those to us like you did with your personal mission statement to my email at aravenscroft@edvgroup.org and Matt's at mwolf@edvgroup.org, and we will compile those. As always, these go back to Mr. Stearns, and we're sending him a final report for everyone. And we are pleased that we already have some students who have completed 2 challenge activities, and we are providing certificates of leadership for completing those activities, as well as offering the opportunity for a personal letter of recommendation from an adventure group staff for your portfolio moving forward. So it's a great resume booster, and we always encourage students. It's only 2 of 4 challenge activities, so please take a second to think about those and send those to us. Any last comments, Matt, or we think we're all good?
I think we're all good. Thank you so much for participating today. We look forward to seeing your goals for sure.
Okay, well, thank you, and everyone have a great day.